Okay, here are some answers to the first part of the AQA ScienceA higher paper exam from January 2012. Question 1. This is the higher tier paper. So we've got a couple of thermometers here, and there's a wet piece of cotton wool underneath each one. Okay, one is put in the draft from a fan and the other one isn't, and the graph shows how the temperature of each thermometer changes with time. So, right, does it say which A and B is? It doesn't, does it? So one is going to cool quicker, so I assume this one is going to cool quicker because of evaporation, and that one wouldn't. So if we look here, one is cooling very quickly, you can see that with this line here, and one is cooling much more slowly, so its temperature remains high. So I imagine B is that one, and the one which is in the draft, and A isn't. So what have we got down here? Let's just check. Which of the graph lines, A or B, shows the temperature of the thermometer placed in the draft? It's going to be B, isn't it? So let's write that in the box and get started on this paper. So where are we? There we go. So I'll put B in there. Let's change the thickness of that pen a moment. There we go. Right, okay, so explain in terms of evaporation the reason for your answer. Explain in terms of evaporation the reason. Okay, now there are 3 marks here. So in terms of exam technique, I imagine they're going to give me 1 for doing that. So let's try and explain this with 2 points. So to begin with, I'll just state, if I'm thinking of peak here, so point, evidence, explanation, and for us, keywords. So I'll try and say B loses temperature the quickest. Okay, but that's not really an answer because I've not mentioned evaporation at all, so let's give it another go. Okay, so B has the most evaporation. Okay, now we're getting there. Has the most evaporation. Why would that be? So I'll say it's in the draft. So evaporated particles take away energy with them. Okay, it says here, look at that, do not write outside the box. There's a good reason for that. They tend to trim these papers and scan them into the computer. So if you end up doing that, it might well be a good idea to do something like that, so you don't write outside the box. Have I got my 3 marks? Well, that's clearly going to be 1, and then I've done what they wanted, I've explained, I've used keywords, and I've used the word evaporation. So I think in this case I have actually got my 3 marks. Right, looking now to part 1b. A wet towel spread out and hung outside on a day without wind dries faster than an identical wet towel left rolled up in a plastic bag. Right, okay, well, let's pop down to this question and see how many marks it's got to start with. 2. Okay, so explain why. What could I add in here? Okay, so it's really asking about the other factors that are to do with evaporation. So okay, so surface area, if it's rolled up, So shall we say the one rolled up has less surface area, whoops, so that's going to be one mark. And shall we say the plastic bag prevents evaporation? It prevents those particles going anywhere, doesn't it? The plastic bag prevents evaporated particles from leaving. There we go. Right, well that's pretty good. I think that's the end of question 1. So I'll call it a day for that one.